Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aran Hamilton. I am the co-chair of IdentityNORTH. Welcome to today's IdentityNORTH Lunchtime Webinar. I suppose it might not be noon wherever you are, but I do hope whatever time zone you're in, you're going to grab a bite to eat with us. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available for you to rewatch throughout the IdentityNORTH YouTube page. For those of you new to IdentityNORTH, you can probably surmise that we founded IdentityNORTH and assigned it this great little logo here, vaguely reminiscent of a compass, with the idea to help people map out this emerging and complex world of digital identity and ultimately to navigate a path through it. Of course, digital identity doesn't stand on its own as a topic. It's highly related to areas like data privacy and data security, online service delivery, biometrics, identity access management, and consumer identity management. Cyber risk, cybersecurity, the Internet of Things, the whole trusted digital economy. So we cover these topics and a bunch more, and our goals are to educate and inspire Canadians with a sense of the new opportunities that are just around the corner as digital ID becomes an important part of our lives. We see huge opportunity to grow our economy by building literacy around the ideas of digital ID, privacy, and the emergence of the new digital economy. To connect is our second goal, and that we want to help connect people and Canadians into a bigger, broader set of discussions and activities around digital ID and its applications. And we can't work together if we don't know each other. And thirdly, we want to support world-class companies, Canadian and otherwise, as they look to gain profile and projects and opportunities across Canada around the world. And we want to help create a globally recognized hub of excellence right here in Canada. And fourthly and finally, we want to drive urgent action. The fact is that if we don't start taking some very basic steps right now to change the way we interact in the online world, it simply won't matter because the rest of our technological lives are changing at such a fast pace, this really complex ecosystem will actually start to fall apart. Now, I don't know if you saw the news on the 16th that another identity and access management company has gone public. We've seen Okta, SailPoint, and Ping go down this path over the last few years. And ForgeRock has gone public just this past week, raising over $300 million and valuing the company now at over $3 billion. Now, I believe that we're on the cusp of more and more deals in the identity space, and that this signals a maturity or a maturation of the market. It's not as hard as it used to be to explain kind of what we're doing here at IdentityNORTH, and people are really starting to understand why it's important. With that in mind, I've been resetting my focal point away from kind of what's right in front of us and turning my attention a bit more to what's coming down the road, maybe faster than we realize. And we all need to better equip ourselves for the future ahead. Our upcoming fall symposium is taking place the 20th and 21st of October, and it's going to be happening online. Unfortunately, we're hoping that in the coming year, 2022, events will be able to be in person or hybrid, but for now, we just have to be virtual. Now, I should tell you that the general pricing ends this Friday, October 1st, so make sure you get a chance to register before you go to bed on Friday night. So, as I said, the last few weeks have been super exciting to watch unfold in the identity space, and I'm really excited we've been able to set up this chance to connect with the team at ForgeRock. Joining me here in our virtual studio is the Canadian Major Account Executives Monika, Labner, Damian, Flannery, joining us from Montreal and Ottawa, respectively. And their very special guest, Chip Hughes, the global lead for ForgeRock's autonomous identity solution, who's joining us from Texas. It's a pleasure to have you all with us here today.
It's great, Aaron. Thanks for having us. Definitely looking forward to the conversation. Also looking forward to getting face-to-face at some time real soon too. So thanks. No,
absolutely. We're long overdue. And I actually, I have to say today, I broke out, into a dress shirt. I'm wearing my good jeans today. I'm trying to take this as a as close as we can get to being in a real formal situation. Thanks so much for making the time. I have a ton of questions to dive into, and I want to invite all the participants to please submit questions to the Q&A function as we go along. I'll try to do my best to raise them as the flow of the conversation goes along. Damian, Monika, let's start with you. Maybe can you introduce yourself to the audience, or should I say reintroduce yourself? Because, as ForgeRock has been a big part of the IdentityNORTH community for a long time now, you guys are both fixtures in the community. So please go ahead.
Sure, let me go first. So I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Monika. I am a major account exec based in Montreal. I cover Eastern Canada, Quebec province, and the Maritimes. I've been with ForgeRock for 2 years. Before I've worked for Gartner, IBM, and other companies. Very happy to be here today, and very happy to be part of this amazing journey with ForgeRock.
Awesome, Damian.
Awesome. Yeah, so Damian Flannery. I'm also an account executive here with ForgeRock. Been with the company a little over 2 years. I'm based out of Ottawa, but honestly spent quite a bit of my time in Toronto most of the time. But recently, it's been at home, like Aran, doing things over video. And I also broke out a dress shirt today, and I'm not wearing shorts, so it's kind of a new feeling for me. But yeah, really excited to be here. Looking forward to it. My role at ForgeRock is really to work with our customers, help them get a better understanding of what we do, what we can do, and how we can help them as with their journey for identity management. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion today. Thanks, Aran.
Awesome. And who have you brought with you?
Yeah, so very excited to have Chip with us. Chip is our global lead for ForgeRock's autonomous identity solution. In his role, Chip is responsible for driving, customer growth and success, as well as acting as the liaison between our product management team, engineering, sales, and marketing. One of the things that you'll hear from Chip today is as we evolve this AI journey, there's a lot of different moving parts. There's a lot of pieces that need to be connected with the various folks. So Chip is our expert. We're really happy to have him here on board. So Chip, maybe just say a couple words if you would mind.
Yeah, no, thanks for the introduction. Appreciate y'all having me. Really excited for the conversation today. And yep, had a background in consulting for about 10 years and then did a little bit of sales. And really the job I'm doing now, like you said, is bringing all of those pieces together and taking this product to market and making it successful for our customers. So looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
Awesome. So first of all, let's just say congratulations are definitely in order. How are you all feeling? Damian?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It feels like a whirlwind. The past 2 weeks have just flown by. I can't believe it. But, it's so exciting to have recently completed the IPO. We're now trading under the symbol Forge. So I don't know if you saw some of our profile pictures, but it's FORG is what we're trading under. Very excited about that. That the whole process of being involved and ringing the bell was a really exciting milestone for our company. But really the big goal here is that this really helps us move forward, keep investing in this important area as it relates to identity and access management, and also really relate this back to artificial intelligence, our cloud presence, how we extend that leadership across the enterprise, across the market, and obviously across Canada. So it's extremely exciting. We're all so honored and proud to be part of this journey, and it's just bigger and better things ahead for us. So definitely exciting, Aran.
Let's unpack a little bit about that, like bigger and better things. What is this going to actually mean for the company, for the products and services that you offer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at this point, it's early days. It's hard to say where everything's going to land, but what it does mean is that it's going to really enable us to expand the amount of people we have, to grow as an organization, to really help evolve and push those products down a boundary and down the roads that we're seeing from our customers and seeing from the industry. So it's all about growth, growing that company and making us, be bigger, better, and even more successful, and also making our customers more successful. So it's very exciting for sure.
Awesome. Okay, and what do you think it's going to mean specifically for the Canadian operations?
Yeah, that's a great question. From a Canadian operations perspective, what we're hearing is that we really want to grow that presence. We want to get more people out there in the marketplace, get in front of them. We've already made a huge investment with the DIAC. We're part of, that process, the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework. We're going to continue that support, continue evolving and contributing to that aspect of it. So what we want to do, both Monika and myself, is make sure that as we evolve and these products grow, that Canada's voice is heard as part of this, and that the needs and requirements of our Canadian customers are also addressed, and we're also adhering to all of those frameworks and trust frameworks and requirements and regulations that they relate to Canada. So really making sure that as we grow in such a way that we're servicing our Canadian customers as well.
Now, you talked about a bunch of things that we're going to be talking more about it at IdentityNORTH on the 20th. The Pan-Canadian Trust Framework, obviously, and where that's evolving, where it's going. We've got a great session sponsored by our friends at LexisNexis that's going to be talking about kind of regulatory changes that have been coming and where the state of the union is with regard to that on a cross-country basis. And so there's a bunch of those topics, as you see, are really kind of evolving. And in fact, I'd say they're accelerating. And we've been working in this industry, you've been working in it longer than I have, but for the 10 years that I've been in it, the pace of change now is just taken off in the last kind of year or two. And there's more news to come. I'm already seeing some questions coming in, and I'm going to put them out there, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about them as we get going. We can talk about some of them now or as we go. But people are asking things like, where do you see the market heading? What are you building and positioning for? Where do you see consolidation of identity going? Is this going to be kind of fact or fiction? And the last question here is interesting, is where's growth going to come from? Because nothing in identity is truly greenfield. It's kind of, an evolution. Any of those you want to tackle right off the bat, or do you want to kind of tackle those as we keep going into some of the other conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'll tackle right off the bat is our vision at ForgeRock is really, like you said, keeping up with the fast pace that we're seeing, related to how things have gone over the past 2 years. So that's really pushed the evolution of our cloud solution, right? So we are definitely a cloud company. We thrive on the evolution and the changes and the releases that we've had with our cloud platform, the innovations that are coming from it. A lot of that stems from what we're hearing from our customers and just having to react much, much quicker. You don't have this idea of a long-term roadmap of waiting months and years to have things rolled out, and we need to see things and changes, pretty quickly. So, I mean, I'll say that as a general statement, but I think what we're seeing a lot from, what we're hearing a lot from, is this concept of being able to be more efficient and leveraging AI as part of that. So machine learning, autonomous identity, that's what we're seeing as being one of the real groundbreakers as part of this, and one of the game changers of being able to not only make the product more competent, more complete, but just really accelerate how individuals have to do their tasks within identity management. And I think that's really why we've got Chip here. We really want to focus in on how we're bringing AI into the mix and having it not just be a conversation, but having it be something that's actually being used by the platform today.
Right. And funny, I want to pick up on something that you just said there about the cloud being the cloud company, because I've had some great conversations with other members of the team in the past. Now, Renee was also pointing out the key thing is, like, for companies that are not ready to move completely to the cloud, that kind of blended solution between kind of on-prem and cloud, and kind of how they well interact to each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, hybrid is a word that you're hearing more and more now when it relates to cloud solutions. So ForgeRock, absolutely, our product set was developed to be cloud first. It's cloud scale. So our product is the same code base, whether you're leveraging our product on-prem, in cloud, your cloud, our cloud, et cetera. So yeah, the hybrid model is something that we're very familiar with and work quite well with. So organizations that need to have certain components, and will always have those components, most likely live on-prem, we can absolutely interact with that. They can leverage the power of the cloud to do things like scaling and growing and shrinking and upscaling when required, based on the needs of the users and based on the needs of the system. But hybrid is absolutely something that's core to our product set. And we've got a whole bunch of conversations that we've already had, and we continue to evolve on that topic for sure.
It strikes me that the pandemic is a perfect example of a hybrid kind of type opportunity, where you've got legacy stuff. There's no way you're pushing that to the cloud in a kind of fast, immediate thing. You've got to deal with on-prem legacy systems, but the new stuff that has to scale really quickly, obviously you're going to want to be able to put that up in the cloud so you can scale, because you just can't scale an on-prem solution that fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got customers coming to us saying that they need to be up and running within 3 months. So think of what that would mean in the old world of trying to buy servers and get things deployed and create all the virtual images. So, we have customers that, quite honestly, from the day the signature happens, their environment's provisioned, they've got access to the full cloud solution from day one, and they're up and running and in production in less than 3 months. So it's a real, tangible goal that we're now able to help our customers meet.
Love it. Okay. Well, listen, on behalf of the identity community, IdentityNORTH community, and the identity community overall, we really, you are very best. Congratulations. I know there was a party or two and probably a headache or two that came out of that, but a lot of hard work. But, as was told to me, the IPO is just the beginning of even more hard work and opportunity. So let's move, we'll shift our conversation a little bit over. I want to the next topic I really want to dive into today is that, you know, stuff that Chip is working on. And let's take advantage of, Chip, of some of your time here to dive into a topic that's on everybody's mind, kind of the evolution and the promise of AI and where it is today and where it's going to go. Is that cool?
Yeah, so we can talk about it a little bit. And I think it's interesting, you know, you said identity is not greenfield. One of the things that I think I would say back to that is, at least from my perspective in the market, the identity analytics space is pretty doggone greenfield right now in terms of what we're doing. And what I sort of see from a market perspective is, hey, we've got a bunch of the SIs right now that are going through, and you know, I can tell you I'm directly working with some of them, trying to figure out what those capabilities need to look like, trying to figure out what the service offerings around those are going to look like, and trying to figure out just from a market perspective, what can we do and what can we not really do, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Same thing with the analysts. I know our product team has been working directly back and forth with the analysts. There's a lot of thought leadership that's going out there right now. There's a lot of thought leadership around sort of roles and how analytics fits into that, just automation. What does this mean? Those sorts of things. And as we, you know, you hit on this earlier, but as the world gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we have more things that we have to cover with digital identity, we think that this is a space that's really going to blow up. And it's, you know, we've talked to different groups where some of the audit groups that I've talked to think that, you know, quite frankly, analytics may be something that's required in 5-10 years from now in terms of auditors and making decisions and those sorts of things. So I think that this is a space right now that is about as greenfield as it gets. I know who, you know, there are competitors out there, obviously, I know who they are, but there aren't a ton of us. And, you know, we're all sort of doing different things different ways. And I think it's really just exciting to be in this space and something that's really going to grow over the next few years as we continue to innovate on it.
I think you hit the nail on the head, because I wasn't suggesting that identity is not greenfield, but it's like we're dealing with legacy systems that are kind of from, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and some of the systems haven't moved too much since then. But then we're having to layer new things on top of that. And so, is it just interesting to think about where's the biggest growth opportunity as we layer these new technologies on top of legacy systems and legacy ways of thinking about doing things? So is that where AI comes in?
Well, I think from our perspective, and I've actually got a slide that sort of shows the ForgeRock perspective. So I'll just throw that up real quick, and hopefully we can all see it. But this idea that we talk about at ForgeRock is this idea of AI and left brain, right brain, right? So ForgeRock, we sort of hit on this, right? Digital identity company. We sell the platform, and what that ultimately means is we've got roots doing access management, making decisions about users, and we want to control, making sure that users have the right access at the appropriate time, and make sure that users, when they're using that access, that it's appropriate for them to be using at that point in time. And so when we talk about AI and how we view this, we split it into those two quadrants, and we're really building out products that are focused on both sides, right? And so what I'm responsible for is helping customers make some things that I think have been long-time concepts in the identity governance space a reality. So things that we've been talking about that conceptually just make sense, things like, hey, I want to be able to use roles. Hey, I want to just give people the right access, the right time, and I want to try to make that as seamless as possible and not create these burdens for people. I want to make that a reality. And quite frankly, you know, I said I was in consulting for 10 years doing this stuff. We've been talking about a lot of this, but we've never really been able to do it. So we want to up-level our game and try to really be able to solve those problems for customers. The other side of this is just that idea of how can I go through and make sure that when a user is actually accessing a resource, I can pull in all of the sources, all of the context, all of the things that I need to make sure that, one, I really trust the user who they are, and two, that they really should be able to access this at this point in time, and sort of bringing in that idea of risk and should a user be able to access things. And if we can bring those two together sort of holistically, we think that that's a very compelling and comprehensive solution, particularly, you know, in some cases for the enterprise, in some cases for the customer business, and really on the enterprise, we can bring both. So that's our view of how we're sort of attacking AI, right, from an overall market perspective and what we're going after. And, you know, just reinforce the point. I think the biggest thing that we've seen is a lot of these ideas that have been out there for a long time. We have customers that have just spent millions and millions of dollars trying to figure out, and they've never really been able to do it. And what we can do now is leverage AI to sort of up-level everything and make make a lot of those core concepts that are going to make you more secure a reality.
Okay, so I appreciate the way you put that as like kind of promise versus reality. Can we talk about, are there any kind of real world applications today, or is this still kind of out there?
No, I think so. Like I said, we've built product, and part of what we've really been able to see is, I'll use roles as a great example of something that we can really drive into and something that's really reality. So from my perspective, roles were something that we would go talk to customers about. They would want to move to a state where, hey, I'm going to use roles from an enterprise birthright perspective, and I probably need roles when I'm accessing specific applications. The challenge was roles were expensive to implement, so you would have to go hire a bunch of people. They would have to try to come up with roles for the enterprise, and then roles would be stale. So you'd also have to figure out how you were going to operationalize those roles so that over time, you would still have good quality roles that you could use across your organizations. And quite frankly, I think that failed at most of the organizations we worked with. And so a specific customer example I can just sort of cite where we've seen this change with AI. Customers working with a partner. This is a partner that we have a really good relationship with. Not a very big customer either. This is about 2,500 users. They said, hey, we think we want to do a role engineering project. The SI that we were working with said, look, the reality is that's probably going to take us about 6 months, and it's going to be very manually intensive. We're going to follow a lot of the methodologies we've heard about for a long time. This idea of, hey, we're going to look bottom up, we're going to look top down, and at the end of this, you're going to have a set of roles. We'll see what they look like. Or maybe you could talk to ForgeRock. They've got this new emerging technology where they're using AI to try to do some role engineering. Let's see what we can do. And so we dropped our tool in, used the AI ML.
Just before you go in, can I understand? It's like how many roles would an organization that size have? And we're talking about the number of different kind of, a different designation of kind of a role within the organization, right? Is this like something like 5, 10, 20 kind of thing, or what are we talking about?
No, I think in this case, we were talking about SAP. We were talking about Active Directory and Active Directory group membership. So we were talking a couple hundred in terms of what they were trying to get to. So not like 5 to 10 birthright roles where, hey, I'm just giving people, an Active Directory account, but more like I am a salesperson or I'm on the trading floor and I need these particular sets of access to actually do my job up front. Can we get to that level of granularity? So more than that 5 to 10, a couple hundred, but not something that's unmanageable, right? You want to make, that's sort of the balance when we're talking about roles and what we're trying to drive to. So
they had gotten into several hundred different roles kind of over time, and it had just happened like, oh, there's another kind of type of person, let's just add another role. And that may have been semi-duplicated across another, compared to another role that existed in the organization, and no one really told the difference between them?
Yeah, so this is a different example than that. And I can talk about that particular sort of paradigm separately. What I'm talking about here was literally, this was greenfield. They were new identity governance system. And they said, before we do this, we want to come up with roles and we want that to be a part of our go live. Okay, great. So they hadn't really figured this out yet. And the challenge was 6 months to go just try to come up with sets of roles. And it's funny you asked how many roles, right? Because usually what happens when you have people trying to solve these problems is you either get a very small set of roles with a lot of access, and so you're giving people more access than they need, or you've got way too many roles and basically you have more roles than you have people or entitlements, and that sort of completely defeats the purpose as well, right? And so what we were able to do is, instead of trying to come up with that over a 6-month period, really shorten that cycle down, get them a set of candidate roles, show them that we could cover what they already had in their existing SAP and Active Directory environments, about 35 to 40% of their existing assignments, and move those into roles that they could then just go take to their business users, their application owners, and start reviewing, right? So the idea is that we can use AI to really shrink the time it takes to get to those candidate roles and start up leveling, the value that those teams are delivering, whether it's an SI that you bring to bear or whether you're using, your own people from an enterprise perspective. And so really, really effective. They saw the value proposition immediately, right? And hit on that. Yep.
They also probably avoided problems in the future by thinking about this all at once with a kind of a comprehensive idea or a plan, as opposed to kind of making up roles ad hoc, over the next few years, where they could have found themselves in trouble.
Well, right. And so that's sort of what I was talking about earlier too, right? So we really shorten the cycle. And this is where I think AI just in general comes into play in terms of, hey, can we use machines to actually solve these problems that humans have had a hard time solving? Yes. The other thing is we can operationalize it, right? So we can start using our machine learning as well to continuously look at the environment and make recommendations. So the biggest challenge that we see is you're going to go spend all this money getting to roles, and then the project ends. The next day, the roles are out of date. And so you either have to continue to invest and continue to have people do it, or we can up-level this conversation, use AI, use machine learning, and make sure that we have a continuous process that's optimizing and making sure that we're keeping things sort of up to snuff, and make sure that you're not spending all this money to just try to keep things going. That's part of the real value proposition that we can put together here.
Yeah, I like it. So does that, I think you were teasing me earlier about the fact that you can also use this to kind of clean up roles.
Yep. So we can do a couple different things. And this is where, sort of another challenge we see from just organizationally. I put this into two buckets. You hit on this. There's legacy stuff that's out there. And when we talk about legacy, you have process around legacy, right? I can't tell you how many customers I've talked to that are like, I'm getting off the mainframe, and I go back and I see them 10 years later and they're still telling me they're going to get off the mainframe. And now it's, 10 years later, they're still telling me they're going to get off the mainframe. And the reality is the core of their business is actually run on the mainframe, and there's just no way to get off of it. But while those customers have that, they also have, provisioning processes, those sorts of things that sit on those systems. Add, hey, you've probably bought some sort of identity governance solution that's sitting in place. That's great. And now we're doing cloud, and you may have bought something net new to go handle cloud, SaaS application provisioning, those sorts of things. And you probably also have an ITSM system, something like ServiceNow or similar, where you're doing sort of ticketing and those sorts of things. All of that creates this problem where it's really hard to rationalize all of that access into a single point, and then understand very quickly whether users should or shouldn't have that access, right? And so when we think about AI, we can rationalize that. And part of doing that is either, in sort of the two buckets, we can do that and look at it just from a, hey, should a user have this particular access? Or are there ways that we can go through and abstract this and start coming up with roles, and then optimize whatever role structures you have in place so that we can make those more efficient and get to that operational paradigm I was sort of talking about earlier, right? And the beauty of AI and what we're doing today is because we've sort of got this computational power, we're able to do that very, very, very quickly and give people sort of that view across your entire landscape with all of these disparate processes, so that you can help make better decisions while you improve those underlying processes themselves.
Okay, so you mentioned the challenge of getting out of date immediately if you don't have an ongoing process. Any other challenges that you guys are using AI for?
So I mean, the big pieces, like I said, is also just automation, right? So how do we give time back to the business? How do we, the big thing that's been out there for a while now is this idea that we have to go through, we have to do certification events, we have to review, identity management. And particularly identity governance, I always say it sounds so simple, right? All we're trying to do, and we've been trying to do it for 20 years, is make sure that the right users have the right access. Yeah. And the reality is things just keep evolving, and we have to continually do more with less. And one of the biggest things that we hear is we've got these controls in place to make sure that we're reviewing access, to make sure we're enforcing least privilege, and effectively those controls just aren't working, right? You hear this concept of rubber stamping. You hear these ideas that managers are doing these business reviews. They have no idea what they're looking at. They have no idea why they're approving people's access. And AI can be a big something to facilitate, help fix that, right? And our view is pretty simple on this. If we can automate the stuff that we know is good and we're confident is good, and give you the rationale as to why we should be able to automate that, then we can take that sort of noise, if you will, and remove it from the end users in terms of what they actually need to go through and review. If you do that, then what you're doing is you're also allowing those reviewers to focus on the things that don't look quite right, the anomalies, the things that look problematic, and say, hey, really focus on this. and have this control that we have in place, the certification of it that we're doing, actually be effective. And in general, that's a good conversation for you to be able to have with your security team. That's a good conversation for you to be able to have with the business, because you're giving them back time, and it's going to support you overall. We think from an overall, when you're talking to your auditor and dealing with things from an audit perspective. So we're driving a lot of sort of disruptive change using these technologies and helping customers be more successful and more secure.
So it strikes me, and one of the things that you mentioned there, I mean, you mentioned a bunch of things. Those are challenges that the customers are facing. And I'm also conscious that you didn't, specifically talk about it, but M&A activity is another big, kind of time that this comes in. So a bunch of these things are, about giving people the ability to do more with less, or
Yep.
to automate these things. I'm interested in how you came up with this product and how the product evolved, or the history of it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's a good question. So
I didn't put you on the spot there. I'm just trying to understand where you came from.
Yeah. So we originally developed this with one of our partners, and the history of this, and sometimes I have a slide to show it. I don't have it today, but what we did is we took 5 different customers that we had, and these are really big customers across North America, and said, okay, you've been investing in the identity and access management space now for 15 to 20 years. Can you walk us through what your biggest challenges are? What are you seeing in the space? Where are you spending the most money? What's the most operational inefficiencies that you see? And what was interesting is, so we intentionally picked 5 customers that were cross industry, right? So we had some financial services, we had some healthcare, we had some utilities. And what we really wanted to see was there commonality across identity and access management, or were there things that we could go look at that were specific to any of those verticals? And what we basically found were most of the problems were pretty common, right? And I've already sort of hit on them today, but they were the things that you would expect for larger companies that are doing identity governance pieces, right? So that idea of, I'm rubber stamping, I've got certifications, my business is overwhelmed, I'm spending millions and millions of dollars on this process, but I'm not really getting anything out of it. Or the other thing, I've got all these systems, all these processes, I have no way to rationalize all of that into a quick view and understand where I need to focus on cleaning up my environment. And so I'm perpetually in a state where I think I need to do an Active Directory cleanup or an SAP cleanup, whatever the major application is within the enterprise. And I don't even know where to start. I don't know what looks good, what looks bad, and I need to go hire an army of consultants to try to figure out what I need to do here. The last big challenge we saw too, right, is this idea of predictive. So customers wanted to move to a state where I'm giving you access, I'm giving you more than just that Active Directory account, I'm giving you the group membership that you need up front. And customers are also trying to move to new models, right? So we talk about this idea of continuous compliance, or hey, instead of provisioning you into a group, can I start looking at you in real time and authenticating you, authorizing you, and determining if you actually should have this up front, and trying to come up with a way to go solve those problems. So all of those things are put together under the sort of umbrella of, we still have huge regulatory compliance needs. It's expensive. We've got to solve these problems, and we got to figure out how to make it more efficient.
There's a couple of questions that have come in, if you don't mind me throwing them in here. Yep. So one is, how would this apply or help existing customers of, say, SailPoint or Okta? And so I can't tell you, it says came in anonymously, so I can't tell you who this from.
No, it's fine.
As an Okta or a SailPoint person planning that.
No, it's fine. So the way we view this, at least from a technology perspective, is that the solution that we're responsible for is a standalone product. So part of the value proposition for us is that you can stand it up quickly. It's cloud native. We usually get it up and running in customer environments in less than an hour, and that it is able to very quickly bring in access. So at the the core of what we're doing, sort of what I was describing earlier, is giving you that view into users and their access, and if they should have that access. And then effectively what we do is we give you the ability to go build automation into downstream systems, whether that's SailPoint, Okta, an ITSM system, SAP directly. What we're going to let you do is make decisions with our tool, which we think of as sort of the brain, give you the rationale for why we're making those decisions with our AI, and then let you push that into whatever the downstream system is. And we don't have outbound connectors for everything, but we're continuing to invest sort of in that space and build those pieces out. So the idea is this is integrated connectivity, and if we can start making decisions with AI to lessen the burden of the number of decisions you have to make, we can do it. And same general principle with like roles, right? We can bring data in, look at the data, come up with candidate roles, and then push those out into the appropriate systems as needed.
Okay, I think that the answer to the second question that I see here is going to be, it depends, like on the implementation. But here, if you'll indulge us, you mentioned being able to give time back to the business and do more with less. Can you talk about what kind of time savings or efficiencies users could expect with AI and automation?
Yeah, so I can go to a couple case study slides that I have that sort of talk about that. I've got a product slide in there if we want to jump back, but it does depend.
We can come back to that one afterwards if you want. Do you want to talk about how the product works first before we get into what it can deliver?
Either way, I'm happy to do either way. So I think, well, let me answer the question, then maybe we can jump back. So sure. The answer is it depends from an automation perspective. From our perspective, we typically can go in and we can see very, very quickly. So we can use the tool, ingest data, and understand very quickly what we're able to automate. And so ultimately what that means is how confident are we that users should have a certain level of access? So we call that high confidence access. And that usually ranges anywhere from 15 to, we've seen one customer where it was in the 70 percentile, right? So what that ultimately means is if you want to go down this path, you can say, I can automatically provision and certify that access. And then what we basically do is we come up with a calculation on what that means for your business, right? So depending on the size of your organization and how many access requests you have coming in, how many reviews you're doing, right? There are variables there. Some companies are doing them monthly, some are doing them quarterly, some are doing them once a half, some are doing them once a year. We can sort of figure out, okay, if I can take this amount of things and automate them and start making decisions, then that means those are things that end users don't have to go through and actually review. The other way we think of this conceptually is we can come up with roles. And I like to give the example of, if I can come up with roles that you can start to use both from a certification perspective, the idea is I can take a number of entitlements and a number of things, put them in a role, and use a role membership rule to put you into a role. So if you follow the logic, if I've got a role and it's got 100 users in it, historically, you would have to click all 100 users and say, yes, these users should all be a part of a role. What we're going to do is we're going to say, here's a role membership rule, and it makes up all 100 of those members. So now you're going to click one rule and say, this is the role membership rule for this role. So I've just taken 100 clicks and moved it down to 1 click. And when you think about what that means from an actual time value back to the business and what you're reviewing and those sorts of things, that can be really, really big if as we start to expand this out. It gets exponential when we start talking about the amount of coverage we can have from a role perspective and how much time we can give back to the business. So hopefully that example sort of made sense. But the short answer would be 15 to all the way up to 70%, which was the highest example we've seen. But usually it's in 30 to 35% of existing accesses and the reviews around this we can automate, which is time back to the business.
Okay, so I mean, those are impressive numbers. Like and I hopefully that whoever put that in appreciates that we jumped into that. I'm having a little hard time understanding how the product works to understand how we delivered that. So I think it would be good to go back to, you had another slide there.
Yep. So how does the product work? It's pretty simple. So you're going to drop the product in, and then it's going to bring in data. And effectively what we're doing, We're using well-known machine learning algorithms. I'm not going to get into them on this, but effectively you're going to click a button and we're going to go through and the machine learning is going to run. And what it's really going to do is it's going to look for patterns, right? So it's not doing clustering, it's not doing peer grouping, which has historically been the way a lot of these providers have done it, but we're going to start looking at attributes about users. So we're going to bring in attributes about users, we're going to bring in user data, and we're going to bring in all their assignments, and we're going to start looking for commonality across those. And at the end of this, what we're going to get is something called a confidence score. And a confidence score is a percentage, it's 0 to 100%. And effectively what it's telling you is how confident you should be that a user has any given assignment. So think of that as, how confident should I be that Chip should be in this particular Active Directory group, right?
Yeah.
And the idea then is someone's still going to go through and have to review those pieces in terms of if those make sense. And usually we'll find patterns where there will be larger sets of users that have high confidence scores. We can approve those and we can say automatically just give Chip this Active Directory group because he has these particular attributes. And so you can start thinking about that as a role, right? So I'm giving Chip because he has a set of attributes. Since Chip has these attributes, I can put him in this role. Since Chip is in this role, he just automatically grant him this thing. The other piece where this comes into play is if my attributes change, then we're going to take it away, right? So we're going to identify changes in confidence scoring. We're going to see that things change across an organization, and we're going to take assignments away based on the fact that as mover, joiner, leaver type events happen within an organization, we need to make updates. And so we can continuously run our machine learning on a daily, a weekly, monthly basis, continuously review what's going on inside of the organization, and just start, making recommendations and making changes based on the access that we have. A couple other key points highlighted here, and I hit on this earlier, right? We work with anything. So part of our value proposition is you can get your data out of the mainframe. We've done that. We can work with that. We can work with your existing identity governance solutions, right? It's amazing to me how many customers I talk to that don't actually have IGA still, and we've been doing this for a long time. We can work with SAP, we can work with your Oracles, we can work with anything out there. We don't, this is meant to be something that is standalone and can work with anything.
I like what you're talking about, the ability to take that insight and turn it into action and maybe even automate that. That strikes me as a chasm. When I talk about in the software world that I work in, is turning insight into action is where an awful lot of things seem to fall down, right? And so you can automate and give it permission to actually take those actions on its own.
Yep, that's the idea. And what we want to be able to do is, like I said earlier, if we've got multiple different systems that we're integrating with, because we've got these legacy pieces that, maybe I'm using an ITSM system to track and I need to go create a ticket. Our goal is to be able to go create a ticket to deprovision that access if we think we need to take something away. And if something's managed in an identity governance solution, great, let's go create a ticket in that particular identity governance solution to take something away or give that access, right? So we really do want to be the brains and want to be able to help you sort of orchestrate across all of these processes while, quite frankly, hopefully customers start to rationalize sort of the back end, because, we still think that most customers are going to want to have one, maybe two identity governance solutions as their core products. That's great. We'll help you get there. We'll help you sort of solve these problems in the interim. And, the reality is a lot of customers have been trying to do this for a long time, and maybe we just make what you're doing today work a little bit better as well, if that's what we need to do.
All right, so I'm seeing a hint of the future of the product. Where else, do you think AI is going to play a role in the future of this and other things that you're working on?
So, I am ultimately responsible for this particular product, and we're really driving towards focused innovation. Particularly, one of the big things that we just released was the role stuff I was talking about. So our ability to go through, do role engineering, come up with candidate roles and handle that. One of the big things that we want to be able to do, and it's on our roadmap, is this idea of ingesting existing roles and looking at customers that have existing roles. So today we can give you a really good set of candidate roles, and you kind of got to go through and do a little bit of cleanup. We want to be able to automate all of that for you and for our customers. So that's something that we're really focused on from sort of a longer term perspective and figuring that out. And then the other piece is, we talked about this outbound integration and what we're doing there. We have connectors for a number of the big systems that are out there, but we have a lot of customers that keep asking us for more. So we've got to make sure that we're supporting our customers, building the pieces that we need for not just the sale points and the Oktas that you were asking about earlier, but other required integrations that we have for customers. So those are sort of the two short midterm horizon things that we're focused on from a product perspective.
I'm assuming integration within your own other product suite. Someone's thrown you a nice lob question there, which I won't even bother giving you time because we are short on time here, but I'm assuming that one of those other integrations are going to be like with other ForgeRock products, right?
So we're already integrated with our own product. I maybe I should have started with that, but yeah, that usually is not real interesting for people. Is, do you work with your own stuff? Yeah, we work with our own stuff. So, but it's I think the point there from my perspective is it's important that ultimately, like organizationally and what we're doing, this product is not something that we're trying to go to market with to go replace other identity governance solutions, right? I am ultimately responsible for this product, and we've done that semi-intentionally because we don't want customers to feel like we're coming in and trying to rip and replace anything that's out there. We're trying to make it work better and make people's lives easier.
That comes across. The thing that struck me, I want to go back and a little unpack something that you asked there, because you said something about up and running in an hour.
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, are we talking about that's the implementation time, is the time to get value from the product? What are we like? Are we talking about like that's when you can get someone to have an account, but they can't actually do anything? Like, give me, sorry.
Yeah, no. So there's a couple different cycles that we go through when we're doing this. There's the, hey, how long does it take to get the product actually up and installed? And one of the things, and we're very open about this, is this is not SaaS. This is something that we go deploy on sort of IaaS still, right? And it's an interesting question usually when I talk to customers about, do we need to make this a SaaS product? What does that mean? Because there are a lot of pros and cons to it, right? There are customers want SaaS. We sort of understand that, and ultimately we think we need to go in that direction. But for now, it's an IaaS product, and quite frankly, that's been something that's really differentiated us from a market perspective. So when I say we can get it up and running, what I mean is if we can get into a AWS and Azure, a GCP environment, we can get the product literally up and running and ready to ingest data. And I say an hour, it usually takes us about 20 minutes because the whole thing is containerized. It's really straightforward. Okay. What customers want to really understand is, okay, that's great. How long does it take you to actually get me results, right? And so as a company, what we talk about is if this is something you're interested in, we'll go out and we'll do these things called assessments where we'll stand up the product, and we usually time bound them as a 2-week activity. And ultimately what we'll do is we'll spend 30 minutes to an hour a day with a customer and bring in your data. We'll walk through what that means, right? So we need that HR data I was talking about, and then any application data you want to bring in. And usually we can get to an initial set of results in 2 or 3 days. And that is not a lot of interaction. It's not a lot of back and forth. This is, hey, we're going to work with you, look at your data, make sure if there are data quality issues, stuff like that, we've got scripts and stuff to make sure that works. Look at it, understand it. Great, we're good. Click a button, let the machine learning run overnight, come in, look the next morning, see if things make sense. And if it's very obvious very quickly if we included things that don't look quite right, because we sort of know what the result sets typically look like for most organizations. So if we need to figure out what went wrong, great, we'll do it again. Next day, usually we'll have full-blown result sets. And what's been really impactful to customers is this idea that I can just in 2 days give you a rationalized view of here are all your users, here are all their access, and here's our tool that shows you why we think those users should have that access, or here's the best reason we could find, we're not really sure the user should have that access, is something that I think was really not achievable before we started being able to use AI and do sort of these statistical evaluations against the access that we're looking at from an enterprise perspective. So we're usually there in 2 or 3 days from a results X perspective. And then usually what we're actually doing as a company is massaging that data and then trying to figure out what that actually means in terms of organizational impact, right? Because, hey, we can go automate. We found 30% high confidence. We can automate 30%. let's
Wow.
talk about what that actually means to you from an organization perspective and how we give you that time back, those sorts of things.
All right, I get it. This is really cool, and I love that these early applications of machine learning, maybe a little AI in there. This is really cool, and I can talk. I just noticed the time, and we've kind of gone very quickly, and I know people are going to be heading off to their next meetings. Let's just take a couple of minutes here and talk about the future here, and where is the market going? And specifically, I want to talk about kind of some of the trends that you're seeing, and maybe you can talk about, like, are we going to see more BYO solutions? Are we going to see more blockchain distributed ID? Like, we're going to be like a lot of new government solutions coming out there. What are you guys preparing for, or what? I guess you're probably planning to be agnostic, but where do you see some of these trends going?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I'm pretty hyper focused right now on this particular product set from an overall market perspective. And I can just comment sort of, I sort of did earlier on where we're trying to take it. I think that this space is going to be something that absolutely evolves. What's interesting to us is, there are things out there that we get a lot of questions around sort of how does usage data fit into this? And I know that's something that a lot of our competitors talk about. How do things like segregation of duties fit into this? How can you make all of those pieces work together as a part of sort of a seamless solution? And I think that that's one of the things that we're focused on sort of figuring out. This has also been something that we're really focused on from an enterprise perspective. And are there going to be applications in this from sort of a B2B space? Are there applications on this when we start talking about service accounts and how we manage those, privileged accounts? How do that fit in? And how do we best solve those problems? And we think we've done a really, really good job of going in and addressing sort of what I think of those carbon-based, those belly button accounts. Right now, we can go solve those problems. We can have the conversations around service accounts. We can have the conversations around PAM, but ultimately, a lot of that is bringing in sort of that other side of the brain, making sure that we're using those pieces together, right? So making sure that you have ownership of those accounts, that they have appropriate privileges, that they're not being used outside of those windows, and that you have controls in place so that they're not sprawling and being used in multiple places where they shouldn't. So we're going to be spending a lot of time focusing on how we can best sort of operationalize those pieces. And then I also think that we're really thinking about just generally automation and how to make that as efficient as possible for organizations, like I was talking about earlier. One of the things I think we've heard from the analysts is these analytics are great, but they have to do something. And you hit on that earlier too, right? It's great that I can give you a report. It's great that I can show you a dashboard where you can see what you need to go clean up. Now you got to go make that a reality. And how do we make that as simple as possible for our customers, and really focusing on that.
Love it. Well, we'll get an update from you when you've got more thoughts on that. I really appreciate you joining on, Chip, and letting me grill you a little bit. And it was great for you to be able to give us a little peek behind the scenes about how you're thinking about this product and where you see it evolving, where you think it kind of measures up, and where it's going to go. Oh, I was going to ask you kind of, okay. And so I guess folks they already know Damian and Monika, and they can reach out with those guys. You said you're down in the States, so you didn't get a chance to, or you did get a chance to go to the IPO parties. Are you guys doing something in Texas?
I did not get a chance to go to the IPO party. I needed to be here, but I did have a bottle of champagne, so so I did get to celebrate a little bit. It was very exciting for us. Yep.
Well, congrats again. That is all the time we have today, Chip. But thank you so much to you and Monika, Damian. Thanks for joining us. The rest of the crowd, I'd like to invite you to please tune into future sessions we have around exploring these kind of big questions about where things are going. We also have a podcast. You can find them where they are, where you grab your podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever. And of course, we're going to dive into this a little bit more at the upcoming Identity North Fall Symposium taking place October 20th and 21st. A reminder that the general pricing, so before we get into kind of last minute pricing, ends at midnight this Friday. So be sure to take advantage of that before the ticket rates go up. And you can get us online at Twitter at IdentityNorth or info@IdentityNorth. Really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much, Chip and Monika, Damian. I look forward to talking to you more in the weeks and months to come.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Cheers.